Good evening. We are learning Parshat Shelach. We are on page 799 of the Art Scroll Chumash. Parshat Shelach continues from where Parshat Behalotcha left off. And as we're going to see, the entire Sefer Bamidbar is a very heavy book with many events that happened that are difficult to understand and to handle. They're very sad, and we read it and we say to ourselves, we wish it didn't happen. We wish the Jewish people would have behaved differently, because it's such a pity that everything was going so well. The Jewish people were with God, with Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory. They received the Torah, they had Moshe Rabbeinu. And if not for those mistakes, everything would go so well. They would go to the land of Israel, Moshe would be alive, and because of the golden calf, and because of the incident with the spies, as we're going to see now, and because the mistake that Moshe and Aaron made, we lost our leaders, we lost our holiness, the level of Adam, the first man, before he sinned, and we lost majority of our nation in the desert. They died, as we're going to learn in this week's Parsha. And as we learned last week, that the Jewish people, as soon as they left Har Sinai, they started making mistakes. The mistakes are continuing in this week's Parsha. And we have to understand that when we speak about the mistakes of the Jewish people, we're not talking about big mistakes. Of course, they are big mistakes for the nation of God, for the holy people. So much is expected of them. And on our great level, chosen nation, holy people, Hashem expects us to be bright, clean diamonds. And any little mistake we make, Hashem judges us to the full extent possible. And therefore, although we see Jewish people making the golden calf, Jewish people complaining, Jewish people running away from Har Sinai like little children from school, and being afraid to go to Israel, and complaining about food and about their lack of trust in Hashem. Despite all that, the Jewish people are the holiest nation that ever lived. And throughout history, if we would give a grade to the Jewish people, we would give them 99. Not 100, of course, but not a 98 either. We would give them 99 out of 100 because they were so good, so perfect, so pure. And despite all the mistakes that we're reading about, compared to how much good we do, it's true for the nation and it's true for every individual Jew, we get 99%. We can't get 100 because then we would become angels, but 99 we do get. So that's the attitude we should have when we read these Torah portions. The Jewish people are sinning not because they're sinners, they're sinning because they're making a small, tiny, minute mistake, and their mistake is quickly forgiven by Hashem. The Jewish people right away go back to their lofty, perfect state, and they continue being loyal to Hashem and being light to the nations. So we start the Parsha page 799, chapter 13, verse 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Send forth men, if you please, if you want, and let them spy out the land of Canaan that I give to the children of Israel." Hashem says, you're about to enter the land of Israel. You traveled from Har Sinai for a few days. Now you are close to the border of Israel. You're ready to enter. And before you enter, I'm giving you a choice. If you want, you are allowed to send spies in. And sending the spies, of course, as we see from the outcome, was a mistake. The Jewish people should have trusted Hashem and said, just like Hashem offered them the Torah and they said, for sure, we will take. So too, when Hashem offered them the land of Israel, the Jewish people should have said, only good comes from Hashem. Of course, we will take the land. Of course, we will go in. Hashem, you want us to go in? We will go in. We don't need to check it out. But due to a certain bias, certain small fault in their character, the Jewish people were worried and they said, let us check out the land. And in their mind, they were doing the right thing because they said, we need to fight and we need to conquer the land. In order to do it correctly, we have to send the spies and find out where are their armies, how many soldiers they have, where are the cities, map everything out, and then we will fulfill the commandment of God to the best of our ability. But because there was a small flaw in character and there was some fear involved, they miscalculated. And they made this decision mainly not because they wanted to do the right thing, but rather because they were scared. And they decided to take God on his offer. And when God said, if you want, you can send spies, the Jewish people said, yes, we will. 1 man, each from his father's tribe shall you send. Send 12 people to represent the 12 tribes. Now we know that we have 12 tribes besides the Levites. The Leviim are not getting a portion in the land, and therefore whenever we speak about conquering the land and dividing the land, they are not involved. Instead, the tribe of Yosef is divided into 2, Ephraim and Menashe, to make up the 12 tribes. And because the tribe of Levi was not sent, they did not participate in this mistake. Each one a leader among them. They didn't choose regular soldiers or even elite units. They chose the leaders of the tribe. Not the Nasi, not the princes, but almost the prince. And they were all distinguished men. Heads of the children of Israel were they. And of course, to become the head of the Jewish people, it's not like it is today that whoever advertises the most and gets the most contributions from businessmen and gives the most bribes, that's the one who wins the election. By the Jewish people, a leader is chosen based on his character traits, on his wisdom, and on his real record. And these actually were righteous, distinguished, wise men. And these are their names. And the 12 names are listed for each of the tribe. We're not going to read them. Our sages say that these 12 names might not even be their real names. Because if you notice, they're not such good names. They're funny names. And sometimes, instead of giving a real name of a person, the Torah gives us his nickname that is derived from his behavior. For example, often people have two names in the Torah, like Moshe is also called Tuvia, or he's also called Avigdor, and so on. He has many names. Or Yitro has a few names. Why? Because one of them is the real name, and others are given throughout his lifetime depending on his achievements. And it can be for good, the name can be improved, or it can be for bad depending on his behavior. Similarly, we see with Esther. Esther has another name, Hadassah. And there's a question, which name came first? Which name was given at birth, and which name she earned as a nickname later? So if we look at their names, we will see that their names don't sound good. They have bad connotation, and that tells us that it is possible that these are not their real names, but rather they were sort of call those names as to denigrate them and to say, look at these people, they behave like this. Like one of their names sounds like a camel, and one of their names sounds like a weak one, and one of the names is a horse. So that's why we're not reading the names. If you're interested, you can look into it and analyze the Hebrew, and you will see that we don't find Jewish people ever since then being called by these names. Okay, now the only two names that are worth mentioning are for the tribe of Yehuda, Kalev, son of Yefuneh. Kalev ben Yefuneh, he passed the test. And for the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun, Yehoshua bin Nun. He also passed the test and gave a good report. Verse 16. These are the names of the men whom Moshe sent to spy out the land. Moshe called Hoshea, son of Nun, Yehoshua. So here again, we see his original name was Hoshea, and his new name, called by Moshe, is Yehoshua, and that's how we know it. This is a higher name. Just like Avram became Avraham because of his achievements, he rose up, just like Yaakov became Yisrael because of his achievements, so too Hoshea became Yehoshua, a greater person. Verse 17. Moshe sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and he said to them, ascend here in the south. The Jewish people are now at the southeastern corner of the land of Israel. And Moshe is telling them, go along the entire southern side of Israel from east to west until the Mediterranean Sea, and then climb the mountain, and then start going north. As you go north, you see mountains. And they went all the way till above Haifa, where modern day Lebanon is, and then they turned east, and then they descended along Jordan River back to the Jewish camp. Verse 18, and Moshe gives them instructions. See the land, how is it? And the people that dwells in it, is it strong or weak? Is it few or numerous? And how is the land in which it dwells? Now we're on page 801. Is it good or is it bad? And how are the cities in which it dwells? In open cities or in fortified cities. And Moshe gave them a hint. If they live in fortified cities, even though it seems harder to penetrate and to get them, but it's a sign that they are weak and they are scared. But if they live in open cities, means they're very strong and confident. Verse 20, and how's the land? Is it fertile or is it lean? Are there trees in it or not? You shall strengthen yourself and take from the fruit of the land. We want to see how fertile the land is. And the days were the season of the first ripe grapes, which means he sent them in late summer, early fall. This is again in the second year when the Jewish people left Har Sinai. They traveled a little bit and then Moshe sent them. Now, actually, our sages say this was summer, and they came back 40 days later on the 17th of Tammuz, in about 3 weeks from now. And that is why that day became a sad day in history. I'm sorry, they came back on Tisha B'Av. That is why Tisha B'Av became the sad day in history. Now let's see what happened. If you notice, Moshe is giving them instructions to bring back information. The mistake that they will make is that not only they brought information, but they also analyzed that information. They became informational analysts. That was not their job. And because they took upon themselves to make the decision, they made a mistake. And they convinced the Jewish people that they shouldn't go up and conquer it. Let's see. The mission begins. Verse 21. They ascended and spied out the land from the wilderness of Tzin, where the Jewish camp was, to the expanse at the approach to Hamat, which was all the way on the north. They ascended in the south, and then eventually when they made the circle around the land, he arrived at Hebron. Surprisingly, the Torah uses a singular he instead of they, from which the commentators learned that only one of the spies went to Hebron to pray at the graves of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov for success. Where there were the brothers, the three brothers, Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, who were giants. They still lived at that time in the land of Israel. Hebron had been built up 7 years before Tzoan, which is a city in Egypt. Now the commentators say that we're not talking about the time when Hebron was built, because we know that Hebron was an ancient city. From the times of Avraham it already existed. Rather, what it means that it was built 7 years before Tzoan, that it was 7 times better, more fertile than Tzoan. They arrived at the valley of Eshkol. The word Eshkol means a cluster of grapes. And it's called the valley of the cluster of grapes because that is where they cut a vine with one cluster of grapes. And they carried it on a double pole. One cluster of grapes on a double pole. Each pole has 2 people on one side and 2 people on the other side. And they carried it with a double pole. Means they needed 8 people to carry one cluster of grapes from the land of Israel. That is how huge and luscious the fruit was. And of the pomegranates, they took one pomegranate, and you needed one person to carry this huge pomegranate the size of a few watermelons. And of the figs, they took also one fig, and one person carried one fig on his shoulder. Now, verse 25. They returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. They went and came to Moshe and to Aaron and to the entire assembly of the children of Israel to the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh, and brought back the report to them and the entire assembly. And they showed them the fruit of the land. What should have been a happy occasion turned into a great disaster. Verse 27. They reported to him, to Moshe, and said, "We arrived at the land to which you sent us, and indeed it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." Now on page 803. So far sounds good. But, verse 28, the but comes. But the people that dwells in the land is powerful. The cities are fortified and very great. And we also saw there the offspring of the giant. And Amalek dwells in the area of the south. The Hittite and the Yebusite and the Amorite dwells on the mountain. And the Canaanite dwells by the sea and on the bank of the Jordan. So far, it sounds like they're just giving the information, but because of the word but, the first word that they used, which in Hebrew is ephes. Ephes means zero. It's nothing. Whatever we said until now, whatever good we said, indeed, it flows with milk and honey. This is its beautiful fruit. Ephes. It's nothing. It's zero. It means nothing compared to what we're about to tell you. So right away, they put a frame around what they're about to say, and the frame is not good. And they're telling the people, prepare for the negative news. And therefore, everything they say from then on is to be interpreted negatively by people. The people that dwells in the land is powerful. They're stronger than you. The cities are fortified. You're not going to be able to penetrate the walls. And they're very great. They're very big cities. You're not going to be able to conquer them. And we saw the giants there. They're stronger than you. And Amalek, remember Amalek, they attacked you when you came out of Egypt? They're still there and they will attack you again. Beware. And the four nations that they mentioned, Chiti, Yevusi, Amori, Canaani, trying to scare them. And Caleb, recognizing that their report is going the wrong direction, tries to reassure the people. Caleb silenced the people toward Moshe and said, "We shall surely ascend and conquer it, for we can surely do it." So far, don't look at their words as a decision. Look at them just as information. And I'm telling you, we can do it. Verse 31. But Caleb is shouted down. But the man who had ascended with him said, "We cannot ascend to that people, for it is too strong for us." They brought forth to the children of Israel an evil report on the land that they spied out, saying, "The land through which we have passed to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. It's not healthy land. And the people that we saw in it were huge. Sounds like a contradiction. And that's what happens when a person is biased, when a person is closed-minded. He's only thinking about one side of the story, his side, because he has fear or any other bias. He will contradict himself and not even notice. On one hand, they say, this land is a bad land. You cannot survive there. It's not healthy. People die there. And in the next sentence they say, the people that we saw in it were huge and healthy and powerful. How do you reconcile it? So our sages say that in fact both of these are true. The land that they went through, they saw people dying left and right. But this was not a normal occasion. It was specifically as preparation for Jewish people coming into the land. Hashem sent a plague and people were dying. And the inhabitants were mourning and burying their dead, in order that they shouldn't notice the spies, and in order that all their righteous people should pass away, so that they no longer have any spiritual protection. But again, because of their bias, they didn't notice. How is it possible that people are dying and at the same time we see everyone robust, healthy and powerful? Something is not right, and they should realize, oh, must be Hashem is helping us. He's already killing them. Verse 33, they continue their evil report. There we saw the Nephilim, which is another name for giants, the sons of the giant from among the Nephilim. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes. And here they reveal their own weakness. They say, we were like grasshoppers in our eyes. We were so scared when looking at them that we looked at ourselves as nobody. That was the problem. When a Jew considers himself a grasshopper, that's when he allows himself to sin. That's when he forgets about Hashem and gives up. Now, chapter 14. People panic and complain against Moshe and Aaron. The entire assembly raised up and issued its voice. The people wept that night. All the children of Israel murmured against Moshe and Aaron. And the entire assembly said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt or in the wilderness. Why is Hashem bringing us to this land to die by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken captive. Is it not better for us to return to Egypt? The fear and the panic took hold of them, and they wished they were dead. So much so that they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and let us return to Egypt. Here they have clouds of glory. They have the pillar of fire and cloud in front of them. They have Hashem's presence. They have the Mishkan, Moshe and Aaron. And they want to run back to Egypt after all the miracles, the plagues, and the splitting of the sea that they witnessed recently, and the revelation at Sinai. Fear causes them to forget everything. Verse 5. Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces in prayer before the entire congregation of the assembly of the children of Israel. Now page 805. Yehoshua, son of Nun, and Caleb,